The 30 frames per second versus 60 frames per second debate rages on Twitter. Can you see a difference between the two? Absolutely. Before I even read this article, I've had, there is no debate. Agreed. They're noobs. Yes, absolutely. Here's the thing. The higher frames, the better. And the more stable frames, the better. Okay? That's all there is to it. Anyone can tell. I agree. This is the thing. I think that there are an amount of people that have only been playing, you know, it used to be much more common than it is today, but, you know, we've been slowly evolving in gaming from, you know, what used to be a very low frame rate consistently to like a constant 30 to a constant 60 to, you know, now we're going well above that. And, dude, I've been playing games on PC at a consistent 120 to 144 frames for years and years and years now. And anytime I play something below that, I notice it. And I think that's part of the issue. If you're not used to playing at anything above 30, you don't notice because that's just what you're used to, right? That's your norm. And once you play something at 60, when you're used to 30, you're like, oh my God, right? It's like mind-blowing. It's eye-opening, right? So everything's kind of relative to what your own experience has been in the past, right? But if anybody is going to try and sit there and debate about the fact that 30 frames is going to be better than 60 frames, you're out of your flipping mind. 30 frames is never going to be better than 60. 60's never going to be better than 90. 90's never going to be better than 120. 120's never going to be... You see what I'm saying? I mean, that's not the way it works. The more frames, the better. It's as long as you're constant. The frames are constant and smooth. You're not dropping frames. And here's one of the big reasons why. At 30 frames, if you drop 10 frames, you're sitting at 20. And 30 is already kind of clunky. You drop 30% of your frame, 33% of your frames, you're sitting at 20 frames. Jesus, it's stuttery. 30 is already clunky. 20 stuttery. 15 to 20 is like wow, right? Whereas if you drop 33% of your frames at 60, right, and you hit like 45, it's nowhere nearly as noticeable. It's noticeable, especially if you're used to seeing something above 60, but it's not catastrophic like 15 to 20 frames is, right? And that is even more appropriate as you go up in frames. Go to 90 frames. If you get down to 70 frames, right? That's still above 60. If you go up to 120 and you drop down to 100, that's still very, very good, you know? So the thing is also it's very genre based, right? A lot of games, there are a lot of genres out there gameplay wise that if you do not have consistent, meaning your frames are staying at a constant rate, and they might flux, you know, between 3, 4, 5 frames or something like that, up and down, give or take, you know, every once in a while or whatever, but fairly consistent frames at least above 60. You know what I mean? At least above 60. Then, or at 60. Then I'm talking like games like shooter games, whether it be third person, first person, and you're obviously going to benefit from way more than 60. But you're talking about 30. You're struggling, dude. You're struggling. Action melee games, hack and slash games, like take Dark Souls for example, or any of the Soulsborne games, right? If you're playing any of the Soulsborne games at 30 frames, and you're dealing with occasional frame drop or whatever, it's much more difficult to address reaction time to a game like that, where you're always having to address for getting your rolls in, your dodge rolls in, things like that, hit those iframes and stuff whenever it's you're not getting smooth feedback from the game visually, right? So there are a lot of games that, in genre-wise, that you benefit even from higher frame rate, right?
Ooh.
You're a McChicken, dude. So, for anybody that wants to try and sit there and go, oh, well, frames don't really matter, you're out of your flipping mind. You're out of your mind. That debate, you know what I mean? That argument is never going to work. Frames do matter. The higher the frames you can get, the better. Now, there's a limit too, because the human eye can only distinguish to a certain point. There's going to be a limit to the amount of frames that we can actually even experience with the human eye. And it's going to be negligible beyond that, right? So, what was the last time I had seen? It was somewhere around like 300 frames per second or something like that. 250 to 300 frames. But I don't know. I need to go back. It's been a long time since I looked at it. But it's like there comes a point where the amount of frames that we can actually perceive with the human eye no longer, it's just too much. It's too fast. It doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? So, but there's definitely something to be said for smoother visual experience, you know, getting the feedback from the game in a very smooth, buttery experience, you know. So ever since the dawn of time, or at least since the late 90s, frame rate in video games has been one of the most divisive topics on the gaming industry, alongside debates on whether game addiction is a thing or if games like GTA really do encourage violence. They don't. I was just getting ready to say that. To this day, it is paramount for many gamers that the title they play supports 60 plus frames. Yeah, absolutely. Often criticizing games even before their release if developers announce they won't surpass 30, as they should be. This is 2024. Why is a AAA game, being locked at 30 frames? Gotham Knights. You know, what? Why? That leads me to believe that there's an issue of developers trying to push things out too fast, or they just don't care to give people the visual options that they should be. Laziness. Because there's no reason why a modern game should be coming out locked at 30 frames unless there is a specific piece of hardware, you know, like the Xbox Series S that is super underpowered, or the Switch that is super underpowered. They can't handle the frames. And in that case, you need to be very public and open about the fact that on certain platforms, it's going to be, you know, stealing at a certain frame rate because the hardware is too constrained. You know, you're too constrained by the limitations of that hardware to go beyond it. But you don't limit all the other platforms to that same frame rate. You do your jobs, you optimize it for the platforms that other people are going to play it on, and you give them those visual options. Don't be lazy. Recently, a Twitter user and a self-described deity of gaming debates known as Nintendo God addressed the issue with a lengthy thread offering a contentious perspective on the subject matter, using gameplay videos from Platinum Games' 2019 hack-and-slash game Astral Change to bolster their argument. Nintendo God labeled the 30 FPS as unplayable narrative as one of gaming's worst trends, saying that excellent games will remain excellent and poor games will remain poor regardless of frame rate. Oh. Yeah, I know. Exactly, Ferret. Yeah. Yo, this is a terrible argument. This is a terrible argument. Yo, what up, Fallout? What's going on, buddy? How you doing, man? Happy Monday. How was your weekend, dude? Yeah, this is a terrible argument right here. Topic of the day, dude. Well, we talked about how PlayStation sucks. All their digital libraries are getting wrecked on people's accounts. Also, the highest pre-ordered game right now on PlayStation is actually an Xbox game in Sea of Thieves, and Soup's really excited about that. Soup's really excited about that. To be fair, it wouldn't be if Rebirth hadn't released yet, but it did release, and so now Sea of Thieves is the highest pre-ordered game on PlayStation, which is really kind of funny. Now we're talking about how some people want to act like a frame rate doesn't matter in games. That's what we're addressing right now. We've hit on Bobby Kotick wanting to buy TikTok, which is making me want to throw up. Silent Hill 2 got rated in South Korea, which means we've got a release date probably impending very soon. That's the most of it. That's the most of it. It doesn't matter if you're excited for Sea of Thieves. All of your other PlayStation brethren, sisters and brethren are very excited, you know? That's what matters, Soup. Dude, Fallout. Me too. Me too. Yeah. I mean, this is what I just went into an entire discussion prefacing this article, but there's this individual literally quoted as saying 30 frames is unplayable narrative, labeled the 30 frames unplayable narrative as one of gaming's worst trends, saying that excellent games will remain excellent, poor games will remain poor regardless of frame rate. Now, look, here's the thing. I will debate this argument very well with this one example, okay? I'll contrast this argument very well with a perfect example here, which I bring up a lot. You want to say that, you know, excellent games will remain excellent and poor games will remain poor games. I agree with that. There are fantastic games that will forever be fantastic games, right? Through the history of gaming. And we haven't always had games and hardware that allowed us to play games over like a 30 frame rate, right? So there are historically going to be games that were made at a lower frame rate that are bangers, absolutely. But just because, you know, there were games in the past that were made at 30 frames, you know, that were great, doesn't mean that as gaming moves forward with technological evolution, we shouldn't be making games better with higher frame rate. The higher the frame rate, the better. It's just a fact. It's a fact. Now, it can make or break games. Absolutely. This person wants to act like a frame rate does not have an effect on a game. You're out of your mind, right? Like I said previously, there are specific genres, especially, that benefit from a higher frame rate. You're talking about shooting games, third-person shooters, first-person shooters, action melee games, hack and slash games, you know, like the Soulsborne kind of stuff. You know what I mean? The higher the frame, or God of War stuff, you know, the higher the frame rate you have, the better. It's a more smooth experience. You see things faster. You're able to react faster. That's all there is to it. You want to act like 30 frames. And I'm going to give you an example right now. You want to act like 30 frames, it doesn't matter in a game. Why does everybody want to emulate something like Breath of the Wild on PC rather than play it on the Switch? Because you get better resolution and you get higher frame rates in a genre of a game that you benefit from that kind of stuff. There's nobody's gonna try and debate the fact that Breath of the Wild is still a banger game at 30 frames in its natural state on the Switch hardware. But you're not going to be able to also convince anybody that it's not a better experience on better hardware at a higher frame rate. That's where this person sucks and they don't understand technology and gaming. Okay? Frames, higher frames does equal better. That's all there is to it. And like I said before, if you're at 30 frames, and dude, look, Breath of the Wild stuttered. You go into the Deku Tree area and stuff like that, there was significant frame drop constantly for me. You know? They did an amazing job with that game. To make it work on that hardware was impressive. I will never, ever, ever try and you know, negate that fact. They deserve huge props for what like they did with Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, stuff like that. But 30 frames was not enough. It needed to have more frames. And that's why people like to emulate that game on better hardware. Those games. At the same time, the user argued that most people wouldn't notice the difference between 30 frames and 60 frames. You're wrong. You're wrong. Suggesting that FPS debate is merely a tool utilized by PC clowns to feel superior. No, here's what it is. And I'll address this too. Whom Nintendo derided as simpletons, and to whom they advised to acknowledge their place in the gaming hierarchy, which according to the user, revolves around console gamers. This dude's a troll. This dude's a troll. The PC side of gaming is a bigger side of than console by about 30% now. You know, what's console gaming's bringing in revenue-wise 30 billion a year. PC's bringing in 45 billion, I think. You know, so yeah, okay, buddy, nice try. Yeah, that console gaming is bigger. Okay, yeah. Revolving around console gaming. Give me a break, dude. But even over that, here's the problem, and I talked about this before. You take somebody like this that doesn't play on PC ever, right? All they've ever done is play on console. They've got this notion that, you know, they're playing into this blindness of they don't play on PC, so what they play on is better than, you know, they've got this. They're one of those people. I'll tell you who this person is. I'll tell you exactly who this person is. This person is that individual that if you don't believe what they believe, you're wrong. You know? Yeah. If they want to incite like negativity and like violence or whatever, you know, on other people, because if you don't believe what they believe, you know, then they're not accepting of other people's notions or anything like that. They've got a very, very narrow view of the world, is what that's who this person is. That's who this person is. I can see it already, you know, just because they haven't gotten themselves into the world of PC, they don't understand technology. You know, they're not going to accept the fact that there could be a better side of gaming in PC, because they want, you know, they want console to be the better place to be, right? You know, and that's unfortunate, man. You know, to be so closed-minded like that, is unfortunate. I think that, and I've talked about this a lot, I do feel that PC is the better place for us to be as gamers because it's got a better quality of life. Console side of gaming has gotten gross over the past roughly decade, exponentially gross, to where it's just not as good taking care of their consumers and fans and stuff like that. Some have gotten better, but it's still not great. And I'm looking at it as from a business perspective kind of thing. There's pros and cons to both sides of it, though. We talk about it a lot. As somebody who's played both sides of it my whole life, console and PC, I can see the benefits and the you know, potential pull for people wanting to play on the console side of things. And for me, gaming's about having fun too, but I will try and advise people on the things that I find to be a more negative side of either side of the gaming sphere, to just educate people on. Whereas this person is just going to try and, you know, be like, oh, well, PC sucks, you know, and they probably won't be able to back it up with any substantial kind of information, you know. Console's better. You know, that's their like only argument. You know, it's really weird. Here's the thing, man. FPS debate is merely a tool utilized by PC clowns to feel superior. No, it's not, dude. No, it's not. Anybody, I talked about this previously when we came across this article. Anybody that has played consistently at a higher frame rate over the years easily detects a lower frame rate or a frame rate loss or anything like that from the standard frame rate they play at when they're playing games. It's a fact. You get accustomed to the frame rate that you normally play at. I've done it over the years, right? Like I said, I've played PC, I've played console forever, right? And I've gone from playing games at a consistent 30, which seemed normal to me at one point, to a consistent 60, which then 30 felt rough, then to a consistent, 120 to 144, where even 60 feels weird. You know what I mean? It's noticeable. It really is. And either this person needs their eyes checked, or they're just a hater, dude. That's all there is to it. They're very closed-minded. They don't want to, embrace a world all the way around that's better for gamers as a whole. They just want to hate on something that they don't care to embrace because for some reason or another, they've found some kind of, affection towards a specific console or the console side of gaming as a whole and wants to shun, PC for some reason or another, which is really weird. It's really, really odd. Given a blend of ad hominem attacks and typical Twitter antics in Nintendo God's argument, it's unsurprising that the user's viewpoint faced significant pushback in the comments and even garnered a community note from Twitter itself. While many agreed with Nintendo God's core point that the quality of games isn't solely determined by FPS, like I did as well, their assertion that there's no discernible difference between 30 and 60 frames stirred controversy. Absolutely. Numerous commenters criticized Nintendo Gods, arguing that the contrast is indeed noticeable and highlighting that once you've experienced the smoothness of 60 plus frames, it's simply difficult to downgrade. Absolutely. Just like we were talking about, right? Additionally, adhering to the principle of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, commenters resorted to ad hominem jabs of their own, calling it ironic for a Nintendo player to engage in a debate about frame rate. Yeah, for sure. In under a week, Nintendo God's Twitter thread amassed over 4 million views and received more than 2,000 comments, highlighting the community's keen interest in the 30 versus 60 frames debate. To delve deeper into the arguments presented by both sides, you can access the full thread by clicking this link here. By the way, what is your take on the frame rate in video games? Yeah, we broke it down. We've talked about this many times through our community over the years, and I've been very adamant. I mean, to me, this is factual. This is not something debatable. This is something that is, you can't deny this, right? The only reason why people have this notion, right? The only reason why people have this notion is because they haven't experienced it. They're uneducated. They're ignorant of the fact that this is a factual type of thing. It is something that they haven't experienced, they haven't educated themselves on, and therefore they're ignorant to what the facts are. I'm not calling them stupid, I'm calling them ignorant, uneducated. And so this individual is ignorant on this and should not, they don't have a leg to stand on here. They don't have any kind, and maybe they're trying to troll people. It seems very, very ridiculous to be trying to debate this when it holds no water at all. It's so stupid. It's a really, really, really dumb argument. It has been for a long time. And so, I don't know. This is such a ridiculous topic, when it's literally a factual type of thing that the more frames you have, the better your gameplay experience is going to be. No doubt about it.